So now with the backlight and 3/4 way through, you get I want to say an illustrative canvas of different agentic solutions that kind of work for you. You've seen it mostly in the browser, the agentic browser experience. You'll also see it in the automation, kind of like no code development side of things. And then you could also see it in terms of what it is and what it can be, right? And I think when you start to look at it as an opportunity for workbenching and improving things, and I don't want to say industrializing because that feels dehumanizing. I feel like the more you can standardize high quality protocols and processes, the more you can get out of this stuff. And all the technical, fancy kind of jargon, fancy stuff behind it, stuff that kind of goes over your head. Having not to think about that is really a great advantage. So, with that being said, there are 3 more principles I wanted to harp on before moving on to the last part of this whole call it opening production. Mainly focusing on organization design. So I have spoken about this in the past, but I wanted to harp on it again, especially in this specific focus. So what am I talking about? Talking about the world of enterprise design. There is a whole movement towards becoming sort of a holistic, collaborative design framework. Being able to transcend all these different echo chambers and limits and mitigating personalities and perspectives, being able to find connections over division, being able to lean on the design that helps us work better together. So there's a number, of course, TED Talks, all sorts of jazz about this. I just want it to be really quick in terms of glazing over it. So this looks like a lot. I'm going to do my best to concisely get this conveyed in under 10 minutes. So, whenever you're designing a holistic enterprise offer, or I want to say service in any sense of capacity, what you're looking to combine is identity, architecture, and experience. Now, what are those 3 about? Identity is how you orient materially your purpose. How do you live that through your story? And how do you materially showcase that through your content, right? So this is an example of that. How well am I able to convey and communicate my mission and my experience in doing this, right? So with experience, what's really cool about that is often on the back end, what you guys don't see is there's journey mapping. There's different channels of distribution and surface area. And there's actual task, like an actual shot list, an actual kind of storyboard, as you see behind me here, that makes that possible, right? So experience is very much deliberate. And the only way it can be deliberate is if it's balanced with the back end of architecture. Now, when I say back end architecture, I'm not talking about it in the sense of software. I'm talking about it in the sense of business infrastructure. So processes that expand our capability, assets that increase our capability, right? And our capacity, I would say, to even execute on these things. So if that all sounds like great, fantastic stuff up in the air, in order to ground that, we really need to marry organization, brand, and product. Product takes many shapes. Software, right? Buckets of service, programs, right? You agree to purchase, transact, do something in exchange for something else. In that, what you're also buying into is brand, right? So what is happening with this? It depends as well on the type of purchase as well and what we're buying, but brand often conveys a sense of fortification, a sense of reliability. And the only way it does that is through the story of organization. And really great organization happens in the back, right? It happens behind the curtains, in the back office, where most people don't see it or get credit for. But really, it's the head of things, right? It's the Wizard of Oz effect. So where does this all live? Why is this all important? The reason why I'm bringing it up is because as we move into a place of organization charts and organization design, we start to explore a real limitation. And, this goes into that in a few ways, if you're interested in kind of diving into how people, outcome, activity, objects, how these things kind of feed in on an element level. For our sake and purposes, we're going to look at it in a more modular way. So what do I mean by modular, right? For some people, they hear that, they're like, all right, he's about to get scientific, especially with backlight. So backlight. let me explain this. So 10 minutes on the time. I took 5 last time, so we're going to keep on that track. Organization charts. What's it about? So when I speak about modules, I basically mean compacting things into digestible bit by bits that you can work with. When it comes to designing organization charts, if you do this just by yourself without actually talking to anybody that this impacts, you experience that siloed effect. You experience more overwhelm, disconnect, dissonance, all that fun stuff. When you modularize it, you create an environment in which you guys can collaborate. So for this case, this organization chart is using another browser agent tool and basically separating it across a legal firm in the realm of operations, finance, compliance, and data management, right? So those 4 pieces that AI is actually touching, how do we ensure it's all nice and clean? So separated by the leadership level, by the management level, and then the implementation level, right? So starting from the ground up, we know that we want these things to be handled by AI. So when you combine them and you bucket them, you can then create a manager that actually works with it. So you'll see that's an opportunity with these agentic browsers. With automations, you can do the same thing. It just requires more time, more setup, right? I'll provide templates and resources in which to do so, but your quickest and straightest line path is with Fellow or Brainbase, currently, as of September 2025. So you'll see that kind of continue on, right? The human in the loop happens right before the management level, and you kind of let it run and, ensuring that that management pulls it off well. You also would have noticed in the last few demos, if you're paying attention a little closely, that it evaluates how it's doing and how successful, and it catches itself if it's routing. Like it'll click in different areas nearby if it gets lost. That's not found in ChatGPT agent mode, manus.am, or anything else here, right? For compliance, very intense, right? Regulatory requirements. We need to ensure those are all being communicated, especially through whatever channels the client is using. Those are all nice and easily integrated. Another piece too, the data management, very integral to ensure that the information is accurate, that it's being extracted from transcripts on a consistent basis. And instead of, you can set up an automation AI to do so. You can also just have a single tool like Fellow, like Brainbase, that handles that for you. So why do I show you this whole side of organization charts and leadership and management implementation? Because it can get quite elaborate. So this is another example by conducting AI. I'm sure you guys have seen this before somewhere in the realm of YouTube, where this gets a little bit elaborate, especially with sales and admin, marketing, product, back office, customer. These charts get real elaborate, but you see the separation that's happening. And they're doing this without even realizing these are the layers, right? Leadership, management, implementation. Their implementation, not to throw, bricks at any glass houses, but are separated, right? Using relevance AI, right? You can swap out with Lindy.ai, right? You can just run these things with relay.app, for example, and it's very isolated. The setup time, even just to set all of these up, right, is quite extensive. In fact, you can see all the different tools that it's actually integrating versus the other one, which was just communication. An example of what this looks like over time, right? This is over the span of 2 months, and it doesn't even touch pretty much the full development of these. But it showcases, right? You can build these truly anywhere between 2-4 hours to 2 to 4 weeks. It just depends on complexity, right? How well do you have foresight to pull the frameworks needed for these things, right? So that's where all these principles come into play. I'm mostly passing this forward to show the thought process, right? We don't just create these things and fingers crossed around displacement. Like that's not what we do this for. We do this because we're trying to actually implement things that help businesses. Right now, there's human capital that's doing these things. And if you provide them AI that works intelligently 24/7, you can actually get somewhere a lot quicker. So instead of this taking 2 to 4 weeks, it can be done within a week or two, and confidently, consistently. Like, even though this is missing a bunch in terms of planning and scoping. Like, if you have the opportunity to squeeze these all in, and then you can imagine what happens over the span of 4 to 6 weeks, you can transform a real business, right? And being able to then convince that business through the marketing of digital employees is quite the labor, especially when there's a number of different tools. Like, having to explain to you why Relay matters, why Make matters, why OpenAI, Claude, why not just use one, use both? Like, having to explain all those things is quite the amount of uphill for a solution specialist. So this simplifies a lot of things, right? It looks complicated here. I'm just showing you this. This is, I don't want to say archaic. This came out not more than a year ago, I would say. Probably a little bit around that. But these things allow you to simplify and explore what's possible. So those are organization charts. How do you go about creating these? So there's a number of ways. Common tool and resource, which I'll link below, is using something called mermaid diagrams. There's also frameworks that you can feed your GPT, which I'll also provide in the resources. There's the manual process, which personally I feel works the best. Of asking the right questions, being like, what do these people actually do? Right? Not what their bio says. What do they actually do? And I think the more we can get clear on that, and the more you have the consultative skill set in order to ask those questions and learn efficiently, these are amazing resources to have in your back pocket.